create jobs, improve productivity, and transition Africa's sustainable manufacturing towards a profitable SDG 9. Before we get to the discussion, I'm going to share with you a video of the Africa Alliance and to orient more about our activities. So please also at this point, if you cannot see the presentation and like to give a tour of the webinar room, on the upper left of the screen, we have a public chat function. On the bottom right, there's a hand signal, and next to it, there is a restore presentation button. You can use it to follow the presentation that we are having here today. So now for the Africa Alliance video. Well, excuse me, it's a bit cold here today in Nairobi, but then I would like to introduce the EU Tech Chamber in a bit. So again, I am sharing my presentation. Please use the restore button to move or to follow the presentation that we have here today. So the EU Tech Chamber is a registered NGO with a mission and vision, technology obliges, co-funded by the European Union, the mission and to support businesses use technology for the benefit of mankind. Our three goals are growth, sustainability, and competitiveness. And so how it does this, the chamber is structured into different alliances. There are 16 in total. We have regional alliances, tech alliances, as well as impact alliances. For the emerging markets, Latin America, China, and Africa, which is organizing this webinar that we have today. We also have an alliance for German-speaking Europe. The tech alliances include IoT, mobility, energy through to food, farming, and fisheries. In the impact alliances being finance, SDGs, women in tech, as well as climate action. So each alliance holds a webinar each month, and there are 16 webinars in total. The EU Tech Chamber is the #1 platform for technology exchange and business networking. These webinars mount to 200 plus webinars in a year. Hybrid expos, which happen around major European cities. The Africa Alliance is planning to hold an expo next year in Rome on achieving food security in Africa. So for our events, we get plus 50,000 registrants. 90% of our audience are company owners and decision makers. After the webinar comes the networking meeting. We will give you exclusive access to the speakers and panelists, and these meetings are dedicated to exchange ideas on cooperations and projects, as well as unique access to EU tenders and worldwide funding. So each alliance has their own unique tender or funding that they discuss. The Africa Alliance, for example, is currently concentrating on an energy system tender. So the EU Tech has a wide ecosystem than events and networking. We have white papers, position papers, newsletters, which go out every week to orient on the upcoming webinars, as well as EU tenders, as I introduced in the previous slide. But I'll also like to introduce the Visions for Europe magazine, which is a quarterly print magazine. I'd invite you to share your article, how you're using science, innovation, and technology to transform society sustainably. The best article gets to enter the print edition, which reaches 10,000 decision makers directly. Also under programs, we have awards, and good thing about it, I'm happy to introduce that the SDG Alliance is holding an award, as the SDG Awards on November 24th. We will have 17 winners per each SDG category, and each winner will receive a marketing and promotional package valued at 10,000 euros. So in the public chat, I have left a link to the Africa Alliance LinkedIn group. Please, I'd invite you to join this group and to keep updated when the application process will be open. And then finally, to engage and benefit, please feel free to reach out to my colleagues, Marcus and Federico. So now to the webinar that we have here today, Africa, Bridging Africa's Advanced Manufacturing Gap. We have Milton Onyiro, who is the Financial Controller for TechBridge Invest and Tsunami Solar Kenya in Mombasa, Kenya, tasked with building profitable and sustainable business. TechBridge Invest is a business accelerator and investment company headquartered in Norway with operations in Mombasa, Kenya. And then Tsunami Solar Kenya is a solar company with operations in Kenya and Uganda, offering SHS and mini-grid solutions to households. Milton's background is in international business, accounting, and finance, with extensive experience in building startups, investments in startups, financial management, and mentorship of business in East Africa. After Milton, we'll have Piotr, who is a Senior Policy Officer for Waste and Circular Economy at the EEB. He has been managing on those subjects at the EEB since 2013. Previously worked at the Polish Ministry of the Environment, as well as the Polish Humanitarian Action and Caritas, Congo DR, and South Sudan. At the EEB, he is responsible for chairing the Waste Working Group that comprises EU level and national experts with a hand-on experience on waste and circular economy policies. Often organizes events related to CEP at EU, national, local level with related partners. Well networked and sitting in advisory boards of few organizations working on the circular economy and waste policies. And then finally, we'll have Anthony Reid Harvey, the Managing Director, Africa Prosperity. And Reid is a ceramic designer focused on the Sustainable Development Goals for less developed countries and their communities. His work experience is over 24 years in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. A premise in Reid's work is that resource-intensive industrial development can happen from the grassroots, that natural and human resources tend to be abandoned. So before I give the stage to Milton, and if you're joining us just now and you'd like to follow the presentation, will you please click on the bottom right icon next to the hand signal? And Milton, I'm going to give you first, your presentation is here. And then next, I'm going to give you the presentation right. And this stage is yours, please. Your 8 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Sultana. Really appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Milton Onyiro. The introduction about me has been done. There's no need to repeat so much about it, but I will take this opportunity to speak first about our company, TechBridge Invest Africa. We have a vision of investing for sustainable futures. and for creating real value for all. We believe in value for people and value for the climate, that is the climate. Our mission has been to create jobs and sustainable startups in East Africa through our incubation programs, acceleration programs, and investment that we do in early stage startups, that is in Kenya, Uganda, and any other place within Africa, because that is where our vision is. And our discussion of today brings us at a point whereby we are asking ourselves, how can we then be collectively be effective in bridging Africa advanced manufacturing digital divide? Because there's something that we have to be able to find out about Africa historically. According to the World Bank report, it is indicating that Africa will continue to register strong economic growth on average of about 6% up to 2023. There's also increased movement of people and goods in Africa following the free trade agreement that most of the head of states of Africa have signed. We know that Africa has about 650 million mobile users. That is how they're embracing technology at the moment. The borders are also open and the market are open. So we have incoming of very cheap imported goods. However, Africa faces a task. There's a high level of unemployment, and that's a question mark. And the historical competitiveness edge of advanced manufacturing in Africa has been declining over time. Even though Africa has abundant of raw material, 40% of gold reserves in the world, 65% of arable land, but still we see Africa also having a high population. That would be a good market in the future. The puzzle then has been, why is it, despite all this economic growth, don't we realize a growth in the advanced manufacturing? And that has been a bigger thing that most policymakers have been trying to find out how to tackle that. Africa is experiencing a rising GDP, but there is a question. The GDP for the manufacturing sector has kept on declining over time. And there's lack of manufacturing, and there's so much the industrialization taking place. I had a time just to quickly review, to do some assessment on what is really taking place. And this is a trend that I really thought that it would inform our discussion for today. Look at the 4 top economies of Africa. That is Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, and Algeria. Look for the period between 2000 to 2010, and you can be able to see something, a pattern that was very, very open. They kept on declining. The sector in manufacturing kept on declining. But there are key indicators that you can quickly be able to look at. If you look at Nigeria, you know that during that particular period, there were certain issues around the policy of then the military government. Were they also able to attract or create a conducive business environment? Those are the 2 issues you look at. You look at South Africa between that particular period. Yes, the economy was doing very well, but you look again at policy. Would the existing policy of the day, were they able to create a conducive environment for most of the investors? We see a lot of capital flight coming out of South Africa during that particular period. You look at Algeria, on the other hand, during that particular period, you see that they had a hydrocarbon policy. In essence, what this means that then Africa practiced something that was like almost like protecting certain sectors that were not efficient, rather than allocating resources to sectors that were efficient. Then they took on policy to be able to allocate resources to sectors that were not efficient. And that is something that you can be able to see now contributing to the trends that Africa has continued to experience. Because if they had allocated some of these resources to sectors that were actually efficient, like agriculture, the trend would have been as such, because there would have been some correcting measure in which some resources are located in places where they're efficient. And so you would have seen jobs being created in those areas. But the sectors that were being protected and resources being allocated at that particular time were not efficient. Basically, that's the issue. Now we talk about governance and policy. And the second issues we look at, we would want to also to interrogate was the business environment. Was it conducive to be able to foster manufacturing sector in Africa? This is a very broad discussion, but yes, in international business, there are issues to be discussed around factor productivity. For this session today, it is not about digging deeper into that, but it's just about being able to highlight key pointers to what has led to this trend. Now, the expectation is that whenever you have a fully functional manufacturing, advanced manufacturing system, then the expectation is that more jobs will be created and the economy will be doing well. And that is very true when you look at historical in other countries in South Asia. They have been able to play that out very well. And that has been built on the assumption that their total factor productivity kept on changing. This has not been the case when it came to Africa. And that's what I mentioned previously. If at all they had been able to change the total factor productivity, then we would have seen those changes in the rise of the GDP and also jobs being created. We realize there are some gaps that essentially led to that. Some of the gaps that we could be able to highlight today is the technological and innovation gaps, which are essential to creating jobs. Unlike where they stuck so much on the processes, innovation would have driven that changes. There's another gap that has been identified in Africa, and that has been the educational system. Technical knowledge, basic business skills, people skills, problem-solving skills. These are technical skills that probably are very important to be able to be given to entrepreneurs so that they can take the notch higher. Also something to be able to mention at this particular point. Remember, I talked about allocating resources to sectors that are not efficient. What happens to people and graduates that had trained in a particular area? It meant that they didn't have an opportunity to be able to work in those productive areas. So we see gaps in the policy and also gaps in the market and the economy. So I would really want to go on very quickly. So in short, I can be able to say that opportunities that now arise and are available around Africa, we can be able to see Africa can be able to tap on certain areas that China is quickly leaving behind, moving to production of low-end, labor-intensive and manufactured industrial goods, and also moving to the area of being able to do some value addition in advanced manufacturing. Digitalizing its economies, moving to digital economies and ICT, and that will be able to see it become a reasonable player within the manufacturing system. Also, it is important that there are opportunities that exist in Africa being able to identify and to leverage on the national total factor productivity. All countries don't have the same factor productivity. So how best can they be able to interlink and do that? Of course, there's opportunity for also financing. They need infrastructure, they need logistics, they need all the value chain to be built up. So there's a financing need, and that's an opportunity for many who would be looking to tap on that particular thing. I wouldn't really want to dwell on the recommendation because most of the recommendation, I think as a team, we will be able to discuss. And that is about just investing in human capital, infrastructure, research and development, making good economic policies and institutions so that you avoid corruption and you avoid where resources are shared inefficiently. We need also to encourage foreign direct investment to avoid the situation of South Africa, whereby it didn't attract foreign direct investment. Rather, it led to escalation of capital flights. Trade and openness should be something to be done, and fostering of competition. We should allow competition within Africa, developing the financial sector so that it is inclusive of all players. Partnership is very key. We need to also develop partnership with Europe and other places so that we can learn from the best practices and also be able to inject in innovation and other things that we need as Africa's economy. Yeah, thank you for my time. Thank you.
And thank you, Milton, for your presentation. and bridging Africa's advanced manufacturing with digital inclusion. And now I'll go to Piotr, just a second. And yeah, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, rather good morning. I hope you can hear me well. I don't have any presentation because, I would like to endorse what Milton said, mainly on the whole questions and recommendations of governance, transparency, education. This is all very correct, and I will not repeat that. I just want to explain a little bit who we are, NGO and the EEB, and emphasize on the sustainability of growth and sustainability of advancing manufacturing. How sustainable manufacturing could look like, and how not to repeat the mistakes of the developed world of Europe or other countries, including Asian countries that are also part of the wrong growth process, wrong manufacturing. So yeah, I will focus on sustainability. But first of all, just wanted to say a few words about the EEB. EEB stands for the European Environmental Bureau, which is a network of NGOs mainly in Europe, but we also have members outside Europe, including in Africa through the African Circular Economy Network. Few words about circular economy also, I would say. And we are based in Brussels. We've been working on environmental policies together with the European institutions and different stakeholders, from NGOs to progressive industry, also European cities and regions. We've been working on those policies for almost 50 years. We've been founded in 1974. So we cover lots of different environmental policies. My colleagues from climate change, chemicals, agriculture, to circular economy and waste. And this is precisely my area of expertise, waste and circular economy. And I wanted now to say also why it is relevant for Africa. Well, first of all, I want to say that also I'm based in Europe, in Brussels, and I work mainly here, but I've also had some experience in working in development and humanitarian aid in South Sudan and in Congo, and seen the situation there. Circular economy is a model of developing manufacturing and also take back systems. So whatever happens after manufacturing and consumption of our materials and products, in order to take those materials back in the economy. And now this is very important. This is not a new concept, but it started to get traction some years ago, let's say almost 10 years ago in Brussels. But the waste policies have been with us for decades. But now it takes much more traction because of economic advantages, but also of losing of difficult supply chains, especially since COVID, since also now we see with the energy crisis and supplies crisis, also with regards to the whatever happens between Russia and Ukraine, that we countries, including African countries, have to look at be more independent in terms of resources. So to reduce imports, but to increase the circulation of materials inside the country and inside the economy. Circular economy works also best if it's local. So contributing with its value to local communities. If we consider waste as resources and not as a pollution or a problem anymore, then we need to take, then the local communities are the best place to benefit from those values, from the value of that waste can bring. But the waste have to be collected in a separate way also. It cannot be mixed, because then it loses value totally. So how Africa, with its development path and progress, should ensure that whatever happens as rejects or the outcome of metabolism of cities and of production and of consumption is kept in a way that is still useful for the economy. This has not been done in Europe for centuries. We've been generating waste without any consideration. It is only recent that we have waste policies. In Asia, it is even worse. Their very fast development path brought to a situation that they generate huge amounts of waste without having any or very little, depends where also, of course, but many countries in Asia also don't have even the waste management systems in place to tackle the waste, the problems of different streams, be it plastic, be it paper or electronic waste, or also bio-waste even, the huge value of bio-waste that it brings, and including job creation for creating composting plants and anaerobic digestion plants, and energy creation, because anaerobic digestion can also create energy, biomethane, with its value, economic value, and also job creation. This has not been done in Asia, in many places, and in Europe. It's really we are catching up now. So my message to the participants, and also to all the governments that we work with and we consult in Africa through the African Circular Economy Network, is to leapfrog the mistakes we've done in Europe by not taking care of a proper waste management, by not taking care of a proper extended producer responsibility. We can also explain later what is the extended producer responsibility. Or let me tell quickly about that, because this is an important part of manufacturing. Whatever is manufactured everywhere, anywhere, including in Africa, it means that the producer is going to sell it, is going to gain some benefit, economic benefit from selling it. But up to now, in many countries, the environmental impact of that production, of that product, and especially of its end of life stage, so when the product becomes waste, is not taken into account. So financially, so who bears the cost of taking care of the waste? It's the society. Is the society, the whole community. What if they produce this product, or even if they didn't produce it, use this product or not? So what is the EPR is that the producer, manufacturer, when putting on the market, or also importer of products, whenever putting a product on the market, has to pay upfront a special additional fee that is gathered in a separate budget in order to finance waste management. This is crucial. In Europe, it works. It could still work better, but it brings the necessary financial stream in order to build all this infrastructure for collection and for recycling. Without EPR, there is no money, apart from European or international funds, which are limited, of course, to build this infrastructure. So yes, there is a lot of topics to touch upon: the transparency, the governance, but also how to set up the waste management systems, how to finance them, and through EPR is one way. And here, EPR is a fee that has to be included in the business models of producers, but it has to be regulated, of course. No producers will do it voluntarily. There are some voluntary EPR schemes, but they do not work because they are not taken across the whole market. So whoever will do it voluntarily will lose in the beginning. So it has to be regulated so that across the market EPR is implemented. So yes, basically, just to wrap up, the African manufacturing has a lot of potential, also because of a lot of creativity and skills within African population. But the lessons learned and the mistakes from Europe or from Asia have to be leapfrogged in order to jump into the next stage, to sustainable production and consumption, where we have products that serve the consumers for as long as possible, are repairable, and are recyclable. There's no way that we can allow on the market products that are of low quality and of short lifetime, because this only creates additional costs for consumers and also for the whole society because of managing the waste that is then problematic, especially in countries where there is no waste management systems yet. And there is a huge role to achieve that of the regulators. So the African governments, different African, not national governments, but also the African Union, recognize and jump on the topic of circular economy quite happily. But it should not be a hype. It should not be only a buzzword. It must be really supported by regulation. And this is our role. We at the EIB, we have been working on supporting, assisting the governments in creating their circular economy roadmaps. I just want to end when I say that in December, beginning of December, there will be a large conference of World Circular Economy Forum. It happens yearly since few years, and it's organized by CITRA. This year, it will happen for the first time on the African continent. It will happen in Kigali, and hundreds of stakeholders from all over the world, including financial, foundations, are coming. We are also coming, the EIB, in order to make sure that the transition to circular economy is done in a circular way and also inclusive way. Milton, what you said very correctly is that inclusivity is very important. The gains of whatever model have to be distributed equally. And circular economy has a potential here to really support the small and medium enterprises because of its local value chains. I will stop here because I would really like to hear also from all of the other speakers and from the public their questions and comments. Thank you very much, Svetlana, and everyone.
Thank you, Zel. Responsible waste management for sustainable manufacturing. That's a key point that I'm taking away. But before we move on to Anthony, and because we started the webinar a bit like 2 seconds later, I didn't have the chance to take a screenshot. Maybe I'd invite the panel at this point, if you can give me your best smiles in 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you so much for your cooperation. And now hand over to Anthony. I'm going to first
Good.
Yep, and then I'll give you the presentation, right? Okay.
Good. Thank you, Svetlana.
Thank you, sir. The stage is.
Yes, we approach the need for bridging the advanced manufacturing gap from the standpoint of ceramics. Industrial development starts with ceramics and the high temperature processes of ceramics. In fact, the Earth's crust is composed of ceramic raw materials. It's what is needed is the training to make use of those materials. I started out that, let's see, this is slide 2. I need to go back to slide 1. Sorry, Svetlana? Slide 1. Oh, here we are. Because Africa Prosperity deals with fundamental traditional ceramics, getting potters and their neighbors into production of essential products, for example, energy optimized cook stoves and ceramic water filters. These are very basic traditional. This is a traditional approach to manufacturing. Because of this, I went to Wikipedia to get a better understanding of what is advanced manufacturing. And I found that there are many different definitions, and that the fact is that advanced manufacturing and traditional manufacturing have a lot in common. There's not always a clear distinction between them. So the capacity of research and development is common to both of these. The important need to do research and development. You don't necessarily have to have had the opportunity of a formal education to do research and development, although record keeping is important. The cultural context is important when developing new products, which might be thought of as the societal context, where there's a big disparity between the haves and the have-nots, is also an important consideration. slide 2. Again, what's common to the traditional and the advanced is the need to improve existing products. This is a constant theme throughout the presentation. Their development of products advanced products is mostly done using computer-aided design, but there's a point to be made that traditional model and mold making for new products is no less important, and certainly it's something that can be started from the grassroots to get closer to the advanced approaches. Before going to the Wikipedia entry on advanced technologies, I thought of these as what you see at the bottom here, the information technologies, the computer technologies, robotics, automation, sustainable and green processes. These are all what people think of as advanced products that everybody wants as part of their development. The decreased cost of increased production is also common between the advanced and the traditional approaches. Innovation is no less applicable. For example, back in March, we put together an energy optimized insulating rocket stove working in Rwanda that burns biomass with no smoke at all. There is no need to cut down trees for wood fuel, no need for production of charcoal. Production of charcoal requires 5 or 6 times its weight in wood. And in its production, some 60% of the weight of the wood goes off as volatile gases. There is also a commonality in the traditional and the advanced manufacturings for the need of green approaches. Some of those who put entries in Wikipedia cited the fact that green approaches are common, are what a big part of what constitutes advanced manufacturing and products and processes. There's a common misunderstanding that high temperature processes are not environmentally sustainable. This is a mistake. When you have properly designed stoves and furnaces and the right fuels, biomass, prepared fuels, solid fuels can indeed be burned cleanly when you have the proper design of stoves and furnaces or kilns. It's important to note that ceramic processes can be initiated almost anywhere. The resources are abundant. What is primarily needed is training. It could be said that that the most effective capital-intensive programs will be those that are resource-intensive, taking advantage of the human and natural resources that are everywhere. What is really needed is training and education. And I might add that the advanced technologies, the advanced manufacturing will depend largely on where it depends on the high temperature processes. There is a common notion that one of the reasons for a lack of industrial development in sub-Saharan Africa has been the lack of the heat-resistant components, the refractories of kilns and furnaces. The fact is that refractories can be produced almost anywhere using, for example, you can start out experimenting with 80% of common clay and 20% of a common sand. In combination, you make refractories, the heat-resistant components that are at the starting point of industry and all kinds of manufacturing. I'm going to stop there. Thanks, Svetlana. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you as well, Raid. And now I'm going to open the floor for panel discussion, questions and answers. I'd like to invite all our guests here today. There's a public chat function on the upper left of your screen. Please only feel free to pose your questions to the panel as well as interact to other audience present here today. A quick glimpse at the public chat. I can see that already some questions have been asked and answered already. I'm not going to repeat what has already been answered, but Milton, if you're still here with us and you can hear me, I had a question for you about how best you can use technology to collaborate between EU and Africa from your presentation on bridging the digital divide in Africa. Milton, maybe if you can go ahead and unmute, I can see you muted. And if not, then maybe let me move to Piotr in the meantime. And then I wanted to ask from your presentation, what is particular responsibility of electronic producers when it comes to sustainability of products that they put on the market in African countries?
Right, thank you, Svetlana. Electronics, there are many aspects here again. So one is the EPR, what I mentioned, extended producer responsibility. Whatever is put on the market in Africa should have this EPR fee upfront in order to finance collection and treatment, standard and high quality, I would say. Whatever happens today with e-waste in many African countries, the main example is often Ghana, where electronics are collected in a wrong way and also substandard. They are recycled in a substandard way. You know, it's crazy what happens to the e-waste there. In order to collect this gold that is in waste or other metals. So the EPR is necessary really in order to finance those collection and treatment, and also to finance well and to create good salaries, jobs for people who work in this. Many products are also imported to Africa as second-hand, as reused, because actually, as you know, the Basel Convention prohibits of transport of waste, electronic waste, to developing countries. So whatever happens very often happens through a so-called reuse loophole, a container full of reusable, in theory, electronics, computers, phones, everything electronic is sent as reusable, but in fact, we've seen reports by, for example, Basel Action Network. Whenever you open that container, 80% of that products are already not available to be even repaired. So this is a big loophole that African governments have to look at in order to protect their society from those from the pollution that is created by this waste. It is really unjust that the developed countries are sending to the African market the so-called reused, but in the end they are not even repairable. If 20%, if there is some part of it that is reusable, fine. The African developing schools also need material, computers and telephones to work, to better, for example, to educate. But those products have to be repairable. The spare parts have to be brought. The open source manuals have to also be available. And the EPR that was paid somewhere, for example, in Europe or in the US or in Japan, for placing those products on the market in the first place on that market, have to follow the product that whenever it comes, even if it comes to African countries. And the last point I wanted to mention, batteries. This is an important point. But African continent is very important stakeholder on the whole value chain of batteries production. And as you know, batteries is booming. This production is booming. But as you know, production only happens in some Chinese, European states, in China, in US, in Japan. There is no manufacturing of batteries yet in Africa. So this should be a top priority also for African governments to create enabling framework to produce batteries to export or also for local consumption. Not only to be regarded as a country that can deliver metals, which are there, it's true. But if we only regard African country as delivering raw materials, but without manufacturing them, this is, sorry to say, but this is another era of neo-colonialism that we want to avoid. So yeah, thank you for this question about electronics, and batteries is a very important part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and then staying with you just before I move on to Raid, there's a question I think maybe best to answer it. It's in the public chat by Paul, and Paul is asking, sustainable and circular manufacturing should be based on proper design. The circular design and strategy, okay, is included in Africa. And
Thank you, Pavel, for this question. I think it's a good question for our other African panelists who are based in Africa or public. I just want to maybe direct you to the African Circular Economy Network, which published few of reports, including with Footprints Africa, for example. They show examples of circular design of systems, delivery and production also. That is very creative. It's sometimes even, I would say, yeah, it's out of the box thinking, much more creative than other countries can do, especially, for example, in textiles as well. So yeah, I would I like to ask to hear from others about this question. It's not me directed to me, but remember about the African Circular Economy Network and their resources on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, Raid, and I can see you're not on camera. You've now joined with listen mode only. Raid, if you can hear me, you have joined with listen mode only. If you could join with your microphone, that would be great. I had a question for you. And Milton as well. I don't know. I can see that you're in the webinar room, but excuse me, but you're muted. Please, if you could unmute or we could raise a hand. Yeah, just some sign of life to know that you're still with us. And sorry, really, to circle back on you, Piotr, but as we wait for the others to get in the webinar room, and then I have a last question for you. And I wanted to ask, is innovation always related to high tech, or can low tech and social innovation unleash economic potential and job creation?
Absolutely, very good question. Whenever we think about growth and advanced manufacturing, we very often think about high tech, but really it's not the only way, and maybe not even the best way, because it's high energy intensive, it's high capital intensive, and high technology intensive. Do we have all those three in Africa? Very often not. But what we have abundance of labor, we have a lot of creativity of people, yeah, and we can build on that. I think the other speaker, the last speaker, I forgot the name, sorry, was nudging towards this, ceramics. There is a need to come back to the traditional manufacturing, in order also to keep, traditional culture, traditional ways of living, which are very often much more climate friendly and environment friendly. But this is also in order to secure that more people have jobs. If we import technology, we can create nice technological manufacturing systems, but they are very often less labor intensive. So they are not needing so much labor, but we need to create jobs in Africa. So low tech social innovation can bring, I think, much more value, and it's not always a rocket science. This is sometimes just coming back to the ways of production and consumption we know from the past, which proved to be also better for climate because they are less energy intensive, and also they are easier to repair and maintain. I remember from my experience in South Sudan, there was an appetite for high tech, for buying machines in the agriculture projects we had, but who would be able to repair them? Or is there available spare parts whenever something is broken? No. So we have to look first at the low level, low tech and repairable and easier to maintain systems before we jump on the high tech very often hype.
Thank you very much for your answer. And I wanted also to get Raid's contribution. He's stuck. So Raid, I've unlocked you. If you could go ahead and maybe refresh your button. Your browser, and you can join with the microphone. And Georgios, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. You've raised your hand. Perhaps you have a question. If you could please jot down your question in the public chat. I'll pick it from there and address it to the panel. And Milton, lastly, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you could unmute, I wanted to get some thoughts about recommendation in your areas of work and how the audience can use those recommendations as you're waiting for Anthony to get back in the webinar room. Also, administrator, if you can help Anthony get back in the room in the meantime. So I can see a lot of typing happening on the public chat, and I'll just wait for some last questions. But I've also left the link to the Africa Alliance next activity. We will be holding a working group meeting on the 28th of September, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central European time. Please do click on the link, and if you click on it, you'd also be able to, access a trial advocacy period from the EU Tech Chamber for 14 days and get into the meeting. So our webinars are free and accessible to all. At our networking meetings are a bit exclusive. So if you'd like to join this next networking meetings to build on ideas and cooperations around bridging Africa's advanced manufacturing gap, I'd encourage you to register via the link that I've left on the public chat, and then you'll be able to receive further steps to join the meeting next week on Wednesday. So Kevin is saying we have the raw materials, the advantage with technology, and I believe Africa is critical. Okay, so finally, Anthony could not join with microphone. I have waited for you. I've unlocked you. If you can, please click on the icon, on the audio icon on your screen, and then you can be able to join with microphone. But in the meantime, and as we wait for Anthony, in appreciation to being panel with us today, we have a little gift for you with our climate action activities, and we'll be happy to present a tree certificate for Piotr here, and we hereby the European Technology Chamber confirms that a tree has been planted for you in Africa with the EU Tech Climate Action Partnership. This copy of the tree certificates will be sent to you shortly after the webinar via email. And a tree has also been planted for Milton, and a tree has been planted for Anthony Raid as well. We're coming to the end of our webinar here today. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the last two panel back to the webinar room in time for the questions and answers. So I'm just going through the public chat, and then Georges, you raised your hand, and then I can see your comment. Okay, Anthony, you're back, but we cannot hear you. So if you could click on the listen mode icon on the bottom center of your screen, the audio icon, if you can click on it and change to microphone, that will be great. Just click on it one more time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, where I left off was a question about livelihoods. And we make the point that if you start out by training potters to make essential items for their communities, for their neighbors, energy optimized insulating rocket stoves and candle water filters. Not every community can make candle water filters. You need somebody to do the silver treatment. But beginning with these approaches, there will be innumerable livelihoods because you'll go on the capacity of production will go on. You'll be able to, once you can produce sanitary toilets, incomparable toilets with that glassy surface that's easy to keep clean in a second phase. Those high temperature capabilities are applicable to so many products in other areas. Metal, all kinds of metal products, for example, all depend on the model and mold making. It's not only computer aided design that can get this started, it's traditional model and mold making as well. Sorry, I was out for so long. I pushed the wrong button.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And maybe lastly, before I close the webinar room, Milton, I was looking for you for a while and I couldn't get you. Maybe if you have some last words before we finally conclude here, please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Sorry, I seems to have lost some connection initially, but I'm back. And yeah, my parting word is that indeed it's a collective thing for us to be able to realize certain gains in the manufacturing sector in Africa. It calls on all the stakeholders to be able to work tirelessly and also to be able to focus so much on good governance. We also need to focus on making sure that the business environment community in Africa is conducive so that we can be able to attract foreign direct investment. If at all we have to move to making advanced manufacturing commodities and high-tech products, we require capital. And as we all know that, yes, Africa, we have abundant raw materials and resources, but we can have a trade-off with capital to be able to use it to be able to support our initiative to grow. It's always about having a positive partnership, and that is something that we should all look towards and embrace each other to make it a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I don't have any more additions from my side. Thank you so much, our audience, for joining us today. And after event post will be made shortly on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. And then I've left the link as well to the next networking meeting at the Africa Alliance. Please also at this point, I'd invite you to join the Africa Alliance LinkedIn group, which is in the public chat, to keep updated on the next activities at the Africa Alliance as well as the EU Tech Chamber, the SDG Awards, when they'll be open for you to apply and get a chance to win a marketing and promotional package valued at 10,000 euros. But as well, our Africa Alliance homepage as well as the EU Tech homepage is in the public chat. And for me, it's 9 o'clock. So it's 10 o'clock in Central European time. And bye-bye from me. Please feel free to, reach out to someone in the public chat. Thank you all and bye.
Thank you very much, everyone, Svetlana, for organizing. I can stay a few minutes in the chat, but I also share my link to contact me. I'm happy to collaborate with you on circular economy, any of you. Thank you. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Perfect. Bye.
free yourselves from the shackles of value-added production. I'm seeing in the chat, yes, Africa could be entirely self-sufficient in many kinds of industry. When you drop ship products and services in from long distances, you pay a high cost. All of the necessary resources are abundant. What is primarily needed is training and education.
It's very true, Anthony. But before you get the training, you also have to have some trade-off. Essentially, there's some trade-off of some kind. Even when you have the raw material, you need to have some good partnership, and you can have trade-off. You can't just get capital from the other side. You must be having partners that can believe in what you want to be able to do and support you.
Yes, but as I mentioned, I have become convinced that the most effective capital-intensive programs will be those that are supportive of the resource-intensive programs. The partners should be doing training. Donors and funders are fixated on meeting quotas for the goals, and what this means is that a lot of African innovators are left out of the picture. They don't want to support small-scale products and its programs. It's the small-scale